Karen the Warp Spinster here. Welcome to my channel where we cut and sew and see what happens, which is exactly what we're going to do today. I've been working with a lot of solid colors lately, which I love. I absolutely love solid colors, but I thought it's a gloomy kind of fall day here. So I wanted to do something bright, not really seasonal, but something bright. And I just went down to my stash and pulled out some pinks, and then to my scrap stash and pulled out some prints that I thought might work with the pinks. I don't usually work with pink as a main color, but here we are. We're just going to see what happens. As I was working on my class sample quilt and all the step samples for it, I decided, I made a piece that I thought was going to be great, and I still kind of like it. It just doesn't work in this particular quilt. But I wanted to play with the concept a little more, and it's, I'm calling it keyhole, but in a sense, it's a modification of if you have, say, a square and a square, or the middle of a sawtooth star, middle of a log cabin, and you put another pattern or something different in the center. And that's kind of what this is, but it's piecing in the center and kind of improv piecing, and the outside may be a different shape than a square. So I'm just going to play with it. We'll see how it goes. I think I'm going to go with this raspberry more than the lighter pinks. And this came straight out of my stash, and I have some pieces here. The wonders of the stash, yes? And so I'm going to start with, say, this one. And I want to do curves today, so I'm going to start out by just, how gentle. I want it to be a fairly good-sized curve here, not too steep, but not too shallow either. And then I'm going to insert whatever there. Now my question is, I'm going to do what I call a ladder in here. So there will be splices that go down like the rungs on a ladder. Question is, do I want the pink in between, or do I want, say, a lighter pink or white or something? Let's try it first with this pink, and there's a piece that I will use later. I think I maybe want to get some more raspberry because I do love this raspberry color. And I'm going to cut a strip from here because I need to have some strips to go in between the ladders. So I'm just going to cut them. I don't know how wide I want them to be, so this is a couple inches, but there's a selvage in there. Doesn't matter. We will make it work. And I think top and bottom then I will want to have these raspberry strips. Got a couple here. And I don't know how wide I want it to be. Probably not very wide. I don't want it to be very skinny, but I also don't want it to be very wide. So I'm going to make it a little wider than I think I want it to be, both because I have to get seams in here yet, but also because it will give me room to trim if I want to. I'm going to try really hard to not get my elbow in there so often today. We'll see how that goes. So this will be roughly up here, and then we'll have a strip here, and then another. And there's a question of whether I want the strips to go in a curve like a fan shape, or if I want them to be straight across. I don't think I do. Or if I want them to just be wonky and crooked and all over the place. Because today is today, I'm going to do it kind of wonky and crooked, I think, for the most part. So I'm just going to cut some strips here and alternate them with this raspberry. Of course, I have the choice of doing one block with just this one fabric alternating, or I can add in all these different fabrics. I think I'll do a variety of them. This one is almost looking too, like there's not enough contrast. It's a lovely match, but not enough contrast. I want it to be a little wild and wonky. So I might have a restful one in there, but I think I also want to put these in just for a little zing. All right, so I'm just going to cut some strips. We'll come back and lay them out and see what we think before we sew it. Here's a rough approximation of what it might look like. I think we need some more of that gold showing myself. And my response to it is kind of bleh. It needs something more, and maybe it's just because of the quilt I've been working on has a lot going on with extras. I think I want something more. It could be in the form of curves off to the side here, or maybe something in the center here. And we do have other pinks. I'm just going to cut a slice of this, and my stash has things cut out of it all over creation, because that's just how I work on improv. It's kind of strip piecing, but not in the way it might traditionally be perceived. All right, so I need this to be a very narrow piece so that it will curve, and we'll see how it goes. My general instinct right now is, I don't think so, but we'll see. And it would be a very narrow piece. So let me just slice a little representation here. And yes, this cutter and this board are in bad shape. And that's kind of interesting. I almost wonder if I wouldn't maybe want white in there. You know how I am about white. What if we had them moving across it? Let's say randomly, but we had another strip here, say another splice, and then another one there. What if we did them in other colors of pink? I did join Red Thread Studios Solids Fabric of the Month. I don't know what they call it. Sorry, Red Thread Studios. Obviously, they are not sponsoring anything, and my own affiliation is that I've signed up for it. But I'll be getting solids, half-yard cuts of solids every month, which I'm looking forward to. Now, say, what if we switched that out for this? Those are following each other too much. So we could do something like that. And we might do a narrower one of these as well. They could cross each other, but for the most part, I don't really like them crossing each other. So maybe not. I don't know that there's a lot of contrast between this and some of the others, but here we are. Apparently I was doing circles with pinks at one point. Maybe it was for the Alice quilt. One of the things, if I'm working on an entire quilt of whatever size, I will often cut these narrow strips and just save them, because I try them in a lot of different places and it's just easier than sewing them and finding out that I don't like them. So that's why I'm not concerned about cutting these narrow strips from my fat quarters or whatever. That's quite a narrow one. That one again is following that curve too much. I would try to avoid doing that just because it's wonkier. Okay, I think I might, because I want to spread out the lighter colors, I think I would put this one here. And they don't have to run the entire length either. I could, and there isn't much contrast there, but for now. And I think that's better. It adds more to it. But you know what I'm gonna do? I know. Not a circle. Although, you know, that might be okay too. But my other great love, I can find a narrow strip of it. Ta-da! All right. Because I always have to try out. Maybe that's an issue with the quilt I'm working on, is I just don't have any black and white stripes in it. In fact, there's no black or white in it. Oh, yes, there is white. Okay. I mean, what can I say? I still like having these, I think. Oh, well, we'll try this. I know those of you who don't like black and white stripes are probably screaming into a void now, but here we are. Could be a black and white striped circle. So count your blessings. Okay. Where do we want to try this out? That would be too much going on, and I think maybe more than one of those would be a little too much going on too. Or not. These draw attention, and if I do it in the center, then it brings more attention here. If I do them to the outside, then that frames that more rather than running through it, which may or may not be good. Now it looks kind of like train tracks. This is going to be a difficult call for me, I can tell. And I expect that many of you are shouting out to me that I must be blind. Why aren't I doing such and such? Well, what I think I'm going to do first, and of course the width of this can change. I cut it wide enough. And I almost think I want that curve to be curvier. This masks that curve. Not sure I want that. And I may, in fact, want these to be narrow and have them sort of bunched up more in the middle, and then have thicker pieces at the top and bottom. First thing I'm going to do is sew these strips together. And if I make it smaller in the center, if I bunch them up, then this curve is going to be pretty much flattened out visually. because this is so shallow there, which is not what I'm looking for. But first of all, I'm facing dilemmas in my head that you probably are not being bothered by at all. So I'm going to sew those strips together and we'll take it from there. All right, I have some strips put together. I don't like them that far apart. That's a little too narrow, although I have an idea for that too, but maybe I do want it that narrow. I definitely, if it's narrow at least, do not want that in there because it I think I'm going to have to go away and ponder this for a while. You don't have to listen to my silences. That's actually not bad. So I'm going to go with that. The other thing that I'm thinking of is, do we want, I'm thinking the answer is no, now that I look at it, but do we want narrow strips on either side to emphasize, that curve? Since I've introduced white in the black and white, I wonder if I want a white strip in there. Let me see if I have one cut from another quilt. The answer is probably no. So let me cut a narrow strip and I'll lay those out and we'll see how it looks. All right, I rather like it with the white. Do you know I'm partial to white? Black and white. But maybe because I've been doing a lot more urban sketching the last few days, I'm thinking about shadows. So what if we do a black strip over here? The sun would be coming from this direction. It might be okay. Now I think that because this is such a dark color, nice jewel tone, I think that I would prefer white on both sides. And now it's just kind of a question of playing, and do I want this to be the emphasis, or is this going to be the star of the show? Is it going to be one of several going through there? I know I can turn that off. It's a little piece for something later. And then I might have some thoughts for what I would do down here to make this a longer piece. So my next step is to cut a strip through here, add in a black and white splice, and then I will need to add white onto each side here, and then we can come back and see how it all hopefully fits together, and some thoughts about what else we might do. So I'm gonna put this back in so I know about where I want that splice to be. We still have room to move it around, so, and it doesn't need to follow this curve exactly, but it's a pretty narrow space, so I can't have very steep curves going on. All right, so I'll do those splices. Here we are, untrimmed, but finished on the sewing, and as usual, it looks better when it is actually stitched together. Trim it up a little bit. As you know, I don't like to go too crazy, so I have options for piecing later on, trimming or adding things on. And there's a lot that I like about it. This, I think, made a huge difference, having the white on the side that emphasizes that curve. I ended up making this curve a little shallower because I didn't want to cross that black and white line. So I'm liking this. I want to show you though the piece that I did earlier. I approached it a little differently, and I like this piece as well. I approached it differently because I started out with a shape which was basically like that. And I started with that shape and then inserted this, which is not the most efficient way to do it, shall we say. But I do like the effect of this being, I guess, in between. So, or a cutout almost. So if we did that, and then something else down here. I did a piece on the quilt that I really liked that had just a straight piece of, so it might be a straight piece of white or one of these fabrics, and then pick up with another one of these later on. I decided it might be easier to show you than describe what I was talking about. This is a piece that I'm working on for a class, kind of a class sample. And this is the section that I'm talking about. So up here is kind of what we were doing before, minus the strips on either side and the strip in the middle. Same concept. And you can see that this section then continues into a section. It's almost like a weaving where the white comes in a longer strip, and then we repeat this with the cross sections and then back to the white, so that it ties that whole line together. So those two separate elements then look like they are continuous, that it's one element. And I really like that effect for tying the pieces together. Sorry about all this foo-for-ah down here. It's I'm just auditioning fabrics and shapes, and it's probably not going to look like that in the end. But I did want to point out that it looks like there are going to be circles on it. Stay tuned. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned next week as well for some new cut and sew and see what happens adventure. I hope to see you then. Please like and subscribe. In the meantime, be well, be safe, be happy, be quilting. Where am I? Peace out.